Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk today about The Outer Worlds 2. This game has kind of had an uphill battle given all those little controversies it's had, including Microsoft trying to make it a freaking $80 game, which was quickly rolled back in the wake of a very large backlash. That and being part of the modern audience push, like so many other game publishers are trying to cater to these days, has them in a very tough spot. So, how did the game actually turn out without all of that in the way? Because honestly, I couldn't care less about the politics behind it. I want to know if Obsidian and the developers at that company can still make a good RPG. I recently completed Grounded and played a lot of Grounded 2. Those are some fantastic games. But I have also played Avowed, and that left a stain on Obsidian's legacy. No joke. The combat in that game was pretty fun. Everything else surrounding it was not great, even down to being very bad. So, how does Outer Worlds 2 hold up? Especially being as I am a big fan of the first game. The formula holds up pretty well, I must say. It has a lot of the same RPG mechanics and a lot of the same things as the original game, but takes a lot of those and runs with them even further. My biggest complaint so far has been two things. One, some of the writing. Some of the writing isn't great, but it isn't bad either. It's just kind of in the middle. And the other thing I took issue with was PC performance. And that should shock absolutely nobody because this is made in Unreal Engine 5 and most games made in this engine lately have performed like absolute dog shit. But we'll get to that a little later. About the story though, I really like the world that they've built here, or I should say worlds in this little galaxy, because every one of them has a story going on, and every one of them intrigued me in some way. The worlds you explore are very fleshed out and very fun to also explore. The characters you meet are a bit of a mixed bag. Some can be a little annoying, some can be brain dead boring, but I think the majority are both intriguing and quite charming. Thankfully, when looking at your companions, who you are going to be dealing with a lot, they are all pretty good. But with that being said, this game does have a very clear bias on some companions over others. Some of the companions have a lot going for them and are very fleshed out, while others just really seem like they are kind of there to give you another gameplay option. But overall, I thought the cast of companion characters was a lot better than I was really expecting, because they all kind of seemed generic and didn't really stand out from one another when just viewing them through the lens of the pre release trailers and footage that was given. But once the story got moving and the ball started rolling, I really found myself enjoying a lot of the companions, especially Niles, who was one of the first companions that you even meet in the game. And he kind of reminds me of Finn in The Force Awakens, except with, good character development. My other favorite so far has to be Inez. She is a grafted soldier, which means that she's a kind of super soldier that is made by combining soldier DNA with that of different creatures available on these planets to further enhance their abilities in combat. Now, I'm not going to be going into great detail about every single companion, but just know some are much better than others, and I'll give you a brief summary of the best and worst. Valerie, I think, is just completely toss away. She's your robot on your ship, and she's really just there to be kind of another gameplay option to have a good skill to heal you. Then there's Tristan, who you can meet and recruit to your little party, and he is part of the Protectorate, who are kind of the antagonists of the entire universe in this game, but Tristan is a bit different. I don't think he is a complete miss like Valerie, but I don't think he is quite as intriguing, being as you cannot be part of the Protectorate, which really takes away from Tristan as a companion because most of the other companions who belong to a faction, you can commit with them and deepen your bond with those characters by being with those factions. But in terms of style and gameplay, he's very fun to have around. I think he looks awesome. I want his armor. God, I want his armor so bad. But he also just runs around and beats the hell out of things with a giant hammer. And that is awesome. Then you have Marisol. This old lady is hiding a hell of a lot. And she is a cold-blooded killer. Do not believe how nice she appears on the outside because she will be quick to put you down the moment you step out of line. And the companion I like the most behind Niles and Inez would be Azza. Azza is just a crazed cultist that you can find locked up on one planet. And once you have her as a companion, she has just a really fun little quest line. And I just love her attitude. She actually is like, if you ever played High on Life, she's like the knifey character of this game. She is just out there and just wants to end everyone and basically relishes in death. She is also all about stealth and just gives you a lot of stealth bonuses, and that's partially how I play. So it really behooved me to have her in my party with some of her specific skills. Now, for the world that you'll be traveling across with these companions, I think it's pretty fun to explore in this game. I do think there is a lot of just nothingness in a lot of areas, especially the second planet, but I did feel like exploration was pretty rewarding in most cases, and I was actually really surprised at the weapon variety in this game. Although it does take a minute for that weapon variety to really set in, but once you start getting to different landmarks in the story, after each one, you're introduced to more and more weapon types, more and more weapons in general, and even armor that you can then take blueprints that you can find all over the world, and including in vending machines and quest rewards that you can craft mods for both weapons and armor to change them in some pretty drastic ways, completely altering how they fire, what kind of ammo that they kind of fire, or what kind of damage they do between plasma, N rays, physical, like just normal bullets, or even like frost and corrosion style uh, statuses that you can stick to people. It's all pretty darn good when it comes to build crafting and exploration. I was really impressed with this side of the game, and it's really what carried me through most of my experience. The other part of storytelling and world building that really matters in this game and really makes a big impact is your sense of choice and consequence. Now, this isn't going to be one of those, hey, I made a choice and I'm going to always immediately feel the consequences type thing, as some of it was kind of a letdown for me at the start until I really started getting in there and paying attention and realizing that a lot of my choices were directly affecting how I was going about quests later in the game. Some people were dead, some people were alive, but then it also can change with, hey, I handled this situation in a less violent manner, or I handled this situation in a completely diplomatic manner. Now that unlocks, more dialogue options and things to do with the next encounter with the, certain faction I was using. I'm intentionally trying to be a little vague so I don't give spoilers, but just know that that choice and consequence does come into play quite often, and it's always super satisfying to see that in action. And that even extends to what companions you have with you, as NPCs that you talk to really can have a very visceral reaction to having some companions with you, especially Azza, who everyone can clearly see is part of like a psychopathic cult. And when they see her with you, they immediately become leery to talk to you at all. So, having her with you when you're trying to be diplomatic may not be the best solution. You might take someone like Niles or Inez or even Tristan, for that matter, to try and smooth things over. It is leagues beyond what you felt in the original game and was a welcome upgrade in the grand scheme of upgrades in this game. And speaking of upgrades, this game handles and plays so much better than the original Outer Worlds. The original Outer Worlds is still a great game and is fun to play, but the actual movement and the way you actually end up like engaging with things feels much more natural, feels much more fluid. It doesn't feel like a traditional RPG with a little bit of that stiffness and jank. It feels very, very good to play, and that goes a long way in making it just a enjoyable experience to just explore and run around to do whatever in. Now let's get to that performance side of things. The performance in this game is admittedly not the worst I've seen of a Unreal Engine 5 game, but it is definitely not up there with the best either. And I'd almost go as far as to say that it feels very unstable at times. Kind of like the developers weren't quite sure how to iron out some of the things with this engine. For instance, when you are trying to optimize for this game, you may notice that if you're using any kind of upscaling, the shadows setting just looks horrendous unless you are using the highest setting. Shadows will be looking super grainy and just wrong and very noisy until you use that highest setting. And the same can kind of be said of the global illumination setting, as when you go from very high, which is the highest in this game, to high to gain, about a 10 FPS difference, you'll notice a lot of shimmering and very flashy lighting that just looks super unnatural and like it's just super not right. Something is going wrong. But if you bump it back up to the highest setting, just like shadows, it works just fine. Like I said, it just seems strange and like something that shouldn't happen when you're paring back a setting. It should have a visual difference for sure, but it shouldn't have the look of something that is just completely unstable. I had this game at a mix of high and very high settings that I found to be pretty stable for the most part. I did have to use DLSS pretty aggressively. In some areas, you could get away with balanced early in the game, but some areas later in the game got really heavy and kind of stuttery, so I had to switch my DLSS all the way down to performance to get a consistent 60 FPS and not really, dip so far down that I could feel the difference. I even ended up using frame generation, which actually in motion looks pretty good in this game. That's actually one of the pluses in the performance of this game. The only thing that is the downside with it is transitioning from gameplay to any kind of menu is very, very glitchy. Like it almost freezes your game up entirely when coming out of a load screen, when exiting out of like a vending machine, when even exiting out of your map, you will freeze for a second. You don't want to be looking or turning when you come out of anything. If that can get ironed out and fixed, this will be one of the better implementations of frame generation that I've seen that doesn't have a lot of artifacts around certain things and a lot of graininess and trailing from different objects. I was actually pretty impressed with it, when I wasn't exiting a menu. So, all in all, I really enjoyed this game. It did exactly what I wanted from a sequel, which was to build on the original game's things that worked and maybe trim the fat on things that didn't quite work. However, I do think the original title does kind of edge it out in terms of likable characters and the general story and design of the worlds that I actually just still to this day find very appealing to just kind of exist in and go through on a new playthrough. I've played the first one through probably 5 or 6 times, and I don't really see myself doing the same here, except for maybe doing a second or third run just to see how different things can turn out. I can happily say that everyone should give this a try. And if you are a fan of the old one, I think you should give this a go. But if you aren't a big fan of the first Outer Worlds, I don't think this one's going to quite win you over. I'm genuinely curious to see what people who watch my channel or will find themselves here think about this game, because I see very polarized opposite ends of the spectrum opinions all over the place on this one. I'll definitely be in the comment section replying to everyone that I can, so start that conversation right up. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And hopefully I will see you in the next video. Peace.